underground cables. Because working policy standards, we don't write every policy within the company. Obviously, such as a finance document that would be picked up by that section. Some of these documents quite operational, that tends to stick with us. But to be fair, when we write these policies, we do take a lot of input from around the business as well, and actually from you guys. That's what I'm stood here today. Get this right way. Very good. So what does today mean to me? Well, what it means to me is you guys are reading these policies, so that's great, and that's what we want to see. It means that we get questions back, but what it does mean, we continually challenge our policies to make sure that what we're writing is actually best practice. We shouldn't never sit on a policy, we should always challenge it, and work with you guys so much now that we're challenging these pretty much all the time. 4 key areas I want to talk to you about today. What I want to cover is current policy. So we met sort of back in November, I think. We made some changes then. 6 months on, we've made even more changes. So you can see that this thing is evolving all the time. So that would be the second point there, which is an update on the latest draft. One thing that's quite topical at the moment, we're doing a lot of work around tile tape, tile boards, but using proper terms, and I'll talk to you about this as well. It's protective tape and protective tiles. And then what I want to do, because I've come back here again, this is the second time to talk to you about underground cables again. I just want to spend, if I get the chance, and we might have to cut this off, but if I get the chance, just tell you what else we're doing policy and standards. That's purely to just give you guys an update that it's just not about underground cables. So key points within current policy. What I've tried to do here, the numbering system might look a bit odd. Why is that not 1? Effectively, what I'm trying to do here is line up with the policy. So if it says 3.2.1, that's within the document within NSP 002. And I just think I want to put that up straight away to point out to everybody that the policy we currently work to is what we perceive to be best practice as I'm stood here. What that does mean though, in reality, when you're out on site, we know that we have problems, we know nothing straightforward. Any changes we do make to current policy, we must always agree with a responsible NPG engineer. Rule planning, another one that gets brought up a lot. People thought we couldn't install cables in verge, well we certainly can. So that's something we've added to the policy. It's footpath, verge, then road. Obviously our preference would always be verge before road. Depth of cables, another one that always causes us problems. We went through a stage where we're getting cables installed in the ground extremely deep. Well, that creates problems in its own right. Safety, access. So we've now added a table that says maximum depth as well as minimum, and we should be operating within those ranges. Again, we know at times this won't always be the case. It must be agreed before you do any work. 3.2.10 open cut trenches. We've updated this table again. What we've done here is we've rationalised on duct sizes, so we're trying to move away from loads of options to single options. We assume that twin wall ducting is used for LV and HV. We know that's not always the case, but that's how we've tried to reflect it in the document. Application of protective tape and tiles. Again, I'll talk to you about that in more detail later on, so we'll leave that one at the moment. A point that's been raised just recently is about earthing of cables with temporary earth end caps. Alison brought this one up to me recently. We've had a challenge on that. Basically, that's an extract directly from the policy. I mean, you know, read that very quickly, but I believe it's quite clear in terms of what it's telling us. If we can't identify that cable end to end, physically, visually, then we must always install an earth end cap. I think that's quite clear. We've not changed anything there. That's an extract from within the policy. I don't think whether anybody's got an issue with that, but it seems fairly straightforward to me. I don't know if that's been raised from in this room or somebody else, I'm not sure. But fairly straightforward. One thing we didn't have in the policy just previous to this year is something about cleating. Well, historically we've had a number of problems with cleating, especially initially we started suffering at 66 kV, where we've got slippage of the cable column up and connecting to an overhead line. Because the cleating arrangements weren't correct, i.e. supporting it properly, holding the weight, we got some slippage, insulation shrink back, which Dave mentioned earlier. We get that at 66, we get it at all voltages. We got this shrink back, ended up cracking the lead seal, damaging the earthing, these terminations were failing. So we've added a section about cleating and saying we must ensure that the cleats are appropriate for the cable when it's supported. So latest draft, latest updates. The last document we produced, I think October 2016. So the latest position is we're updating the document. I've handed the latest draft out for review by my colleagues. We're expecting something June, July this year. So when we update these documents, where do we get this information from? Well, we certainly get it from you guys, but we also get it from people with, who work within Northern Powergrid. In reality, what do we think about the document? Well, personally, I think it's a pretty decent document. I think it ticks a lot of boxes. I don't believe there's lots of change. I think it's more about sort of clarifying situations. We're never going to massively change that document. It's worked for a number of years, it's worked well. So when I say what's changed, well, I say nothing in reality. The only thing that really does change is we clarify situations and we try and remove confusion. So a perfect example is, what is the difference between LV tape and HV tape? Well, in reality, there's none. It's exactly the same thing. The width of the tape is, as it says there, is determined by the width of the duct or the cable. Within all of our policies, in the back end of any of our policies, we have a section 4.3 which captures all the amendments from the previous version. So when you're reading that document, you can actually pick up on exactly what's changed. That sits within all our documents. So what's changed? Descriptions for tile tape. Tiles tape, it now aligns more closely to 1223. Not that it always did, but actually how we describe things now is more in line. We're using similar words, similar descriptions. So really, what we're trying to do is make sure that if you pick up 1223, you'll pick up our policy, you know exactly what you're looking at. One thing that got brought up recently, there's a table on depth of cables, and it talks about clarification of the term roadways and land open to traffic. But what we mean by that is, obviously your roadways, we know exactly what we mean there. But this is sort of our traffic volume areas, so it's car parks, communal parking areas, regularly used access areas, I guess, as well. And that was, again, a clarification that was brought up by one of you guys. I don't know which it was, but it's there. We picked up on it, we've included it in policy. Trenchless excavation. Again, we got some feedback. I think it was from one of the ICPs who mentioned that what we've got in there in terms of actually physically installing these cables. In this instance, it were 11 and 20 kV cable on some 33 triplex. The ducts weren't big enough, so they were struggling to actually install the duct. We pick up on that. We speak to our guys internally. We speak to you guys. Again, another look in it. Open cut trenches and service ducts. Again, just to clarify, LV services, single phase, 38mm. And this is quite important as well. We try and use terms like OD, ID, because there's always confusion when someone says, oh, it's a 150 duct. Well, it's 150 on the outside, but it's 125 on the inside. But if it's a single wall duct, it's a different dimension again. So when we quote dimensions on ducting in the policy, we always include OD or ID. Try and again minimise confusion. Cutting and sealing of cables, again, somebody brought up to us. End caps, shrinkable end caps. I think in the document it historically just had heat shrink. There is cold shrink technology out there. If that's assessed and approved, then that can be used. So key updates, summary of, well, as it says there, We think it's an evolution, not a revolution. We don't believe these are massive changes. We've spent a lot of time trying to clarify, make the document easier and usable for people who want to read it, and clearly you guys have. It will ensure a more consistent approach. So that's great from our auditors' point of view when they're going out on site, looking at jobs. They're looking at the same thing. They're looking at a standard way of working and a document that clearly is critical for these guys to do their work. And most importantly, it's operationally deliverable. It's all right, people sat writing policies, but actually, can we deliver it on site? And that's really, really important, and that's why it's always important to get feedback from real people. So, cable protective tape and tiles. Again, quite topical at the moment. The section of the document that you'll see it in is 3.2.10, which is open cut trenches. And just a few clarifications on wording that we're using in the policy, again to align with 12.23. So tile tape, well actually it's cable protective tape. Tile boards, cable protective tiles. Tape is the semi-flexible stuff, tiles are the solid stuff. And as it says there, we use tape, or should be using tape, to 20 kV, and tiles at 33 and above. Does everybody okay with that, yeah? And some of the key pointers for installation of this. There always has been, and it always brings up a lot of interest, is overlapping tape, or how far should it overlap over the cable or the duct. Well, it's always been 50 millimetres, excuse me. It's always been 50 millimetres either side of the duct or the cable. That's never changed, and it's always been in policy. That's quite important. To this end, over recent times we've been doing these updates, we've had a look at the widths of tape that we supply. Most recently we've introduced a 250 millimetre wide tape. That's purely because much of our ducting at LV and HV is 150. So we introduced a 250 wide tape that allows one piece of tape to run over that duct. We're never saying we don't like overlapping of tape, because there'll always be a situation, whether it's on a bend or something, where you can't get the full 50 mil overlap. So we've never said we don't want overlapping. All we're trying to do is be a little bit more efficient, think financially. If we can supply tape to you guys for internal, external use, one piece of tape over one duct makes total sense. Again, just to reiterate, up to 20 kV when you're laying a tape, it's 150 mil above the cable or the duct, and at 33 and above, it's 75 mil above the cable and duct. Again, the 75 at 33 has never changed. It used to say 150 mil above the cable, but how would you measure that if it's inside the duct? You can't do it, it's not possible. So basically we've decided to move that from the duct or cable, whichever's highest. Obviously if it's a direct laid system it would be the cable. Any questions on that? No? And finally, I hope you're all aware of this, we're transitioning from the black yellow tape to the brown yellow. Again, that's to align with ENAPS 1223. The tape at the bottom is effectively what 1223 says we should be using. It's the brown edge. We've worked with our suppliers to bring this online. Is everybody seeing this colour now? Yeah, great. That's good to hear. Just points that's really important. It must always have the Northern Powergrid logo. That's really important. Our auditors will always pick up on that. That's key for us. We need to know what's under that tape. We had a deadline out that's passed for the use of the yellow black. We've extended it based on feedback again from external, internal staff, our logistics people. We've extended that to the end of August. What I will say is that's given 6 months for this transition. We're not going to put any further extensions in place. After that date, if our auditors come across the black yellow, it's within our right to refuse that being installed. However, we will take things on a case-by-case basis, but we really want to work to this deadline. It's important that our auditors are looking at the same thing. They're not having to make decisions about different things on site. They need to be seeing the same thing. We believe 6 months is a reasonable length of time to transition. Any questions on tile tape? It's quite an important point. It's quite topical. Oh, must be doing something right then, so good. Couple of slides really. I just want to just throw this at the end. I know I'm conscious of time, so I'll take only a couple of minutes. As it says there, we do far more than underground cables within policy and standards. I'm not going to read every one of those, but what you can see is not only do we write policy, but not all the policies are in the business. We do carry out a lot of audit activities of suppliers. So that means visiting factories, carrying out audits in line with ISO 9001, and one of the key aspects there is we wanting to ensure that we've got quality and consistent processes in place that ensures that the products we install in our network are fit for purpose. You're aware of the suite of MPS documents, which are all our specification documents. Off the top of my head, one of interest would always be 002003, which is the protective tile tape document. NSP 002, clearly that's one of our key documents in terms of what we're talking about today. And one of the points that my manager wanted me to bring, and I think it's quite an important one, we're going through a major review on our LV joint suite. We're looking at a major rationalisation. I think we're currently stand at something like 53 kits. We're looking to take that down to 18. The way we're going to achieve that is by having a base set of kits, and then we're going to create modules that basically you'll pick up a base kit and then you'll bring a module across and use that to carry out the appropriate jointing. So that's a bit of a watching brief, and once we start heading down this road, which we are at the moment but it's still in its early days, we will be sharing that with you. Keep you aware of what's happening there, because obviously you guys will be using this stuff, so it'll be quite a big change for us, but we think from an efficiencies point of view, standardisation point of view, again, we think this is the way forwards. Any questions on that one? And really that's just a slide I've stuck on the end. What we've been talking about today is a lot of underground policies, but you can see I've just thrown a few recent policies up there and specifications that we're currently working on, so you can see it's anything from construction of 33 kV overhead line down to lab analysis for transformer rail, so it's quite a varied suite of documents. There's plenty more than that that keep us interested on a day-to-day and weekly basis.